Good morning, everyone. Good morning, world. This is Ben Coleman, your host for today's presentation, Florida Aviation Network, here coming to you live and in the clear from the Gizmo Productions USA studio. And thank you to Michael Gennaro for working with us here at this studio. We're on his turf, but he shares it remarkably well. He plays well with others. The National Aviation Safety Foundation is actually kind of overall the Florida Aviation Network, which is a project of the NASF. So please get involved with us. If you're a sponsor or a supporter in any way, shape, manner, or form, we wouldn't be able to do this without your help. So we are making a mark. We're making a difference. I think we're responsible for reducing at least a half a dozen accidents just this last week. Prove me wrong. We're going to talk about something a little bit different today, but there is an airworthiness thread in here. We do have some production from the Seniors Soaring, National Seniors Soaring Association in Claremont, Florida at the actually Seminole Lake Glider Port. And Sean Knickerbocker was supposed to be here today. He had some technical complications, but he was there. He hosted this event, and we'll be talking more about Sean later on. But let's take a little glimpse at what Ted Smith put together for us, one of our crew here. Did a great job, Ted. Let's see what you did. Great presentation. Ted Smith does a wonderful job at what he's up to. And you know, when I see a glider or a soar plane or sailplane, whatever you want to call it, it releases a certain amount of a pleasant feeling because it is so peaceful. Have you ever been up in a glider? If you haven't, you need to enjoy the experience, and it's very safe. I was thinking just on my way here today, Melody and I were driving up from Lakeland to Oviedo, and all this talk about aviation accidents and the news media is trying to blow it up that there's a crash, 3 or 4 every day. No, we were in more danger driving here, much more danger than you are up in our national airspace. And that's thanks to a lot of people, a lot of dedicated folks. The FAA in particular, and that their mandate is to get out there and keep the place safe. They've got some regulations, some standards that they help uphold. And all of us that operate in this system, we encourage you to get involved with the system, and you'll learn how safe it is. Don't throw rocks from an armchair, saying until you got some skin in the game, and that's why we're going to get you in a soaring plane, a sailplane, and you're going to have some fun learning something about aviation that you didn't think was really aviation. But anyway, we do have a special guest. Sean was unable to make it today, but there's no way you could replace Sean Knickerbocker once you meet and know Sean. However, we've got a close second. We got Bob Jex with us here today.
Good morning, Ben. Pleasure to be with you.
Bob, it's always with you as well. And for those who don't know Bob Jex, you should. He was a mainstay here with the FAA safety team for many years. He recently retired, and we've got him now hooked at the Florida Aviation Network to come and help us here with all of it. And Bob's job with the FAA was a true calling for Bob because he really loves sharing. I'm talking for Bob now, because almost like you're not here. But he really does passionately believe in what he does and what he sells. What are you selling, Bob?
I'll tell you, one of the greatest quotes I've ever heard was one that I left with my colleagues when I retired. It was a great quote from Pablo Picasso, of all people. He said, "The secret of life is to find your gift. The purpose of life is to give it away." And that is my calling. And I am very proud to work with the Florida Aviation Network, the O.B. Youngs, the Ben Colemans, the people here in the studio today, the Orlando Fast team in particular, and the FAA safety team in general. I also have to say right off the bat, I am no glider pilot, but I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night. So I'll make a few comments for the gliding community today.
And you were there last week at the Seniors?
I was, and what a pleasure it was to be there. What a neat place.
So you have first-hand knowledge of what was going on.
I have been there. I've seen the stuff that Ted showed us in his wonderful video, and it's just fascinating to be out there. There is an energy that comes with participating in the Seniors Soaring Championships, even as a helper, even as a volunteer. The energy is focused on the glider pilots and the activities that they're doing. It's amazing to see, it's amazing to watch, and even more so to participate in it.
Well, I tell you, the energy you're talking about there, the event at the Seniors at Claremont, that was the amateur and the beginners, is that correct?
Hardly. The Seniors Soaring Championships is
Let me interrupt you. Yeah. There's John McElhaney.
That's John McElroy, Johnny Mac. He flew in the Senior Soaring Championships. That was his debut as a competitor, and what a mentor he is. Great guy, great to hang around him. He flies corporate. He's a holder of 2 world records, and not in gliders, but he's trying his hand and making his mark in the glider world. And I helped him get his glider into the air, and what a pleasure it is to be with that guy. So Johnny Mac, a tip of the hat to you, sir, and I look forward to working with you in the years ahead. This is no place for amateurs. The Senior Soaring Championships is for guys who know what they're doing, because as you saw in Ted's video, there were 60 gliders there queuing up for takeoff. That is very, very dense, very busy airspace, and not a place where somebody who doesn't know what they're doing is going to be found. It is best to get an education, maybe riding in somebody's back seat. A glider actually flies faster when it weighs a little more. So an experienced glider veteran like Sean Knickerbocker might grab somebody and say, let's go flying in the glider today, and you can go faster in your glides when you've got the extra weight on board.
And particularly a little aft CG.
Little aft CG, the aircraft can be a little more maneuverable, a little harder to recover from the stall, but we won't stall.
No. Bob, we're on the prefaces here of the beginning. Why would someone want to start their flight training and their education in a soar plane?
I think the answer to that question, and it's a very good question for any aspiring pilot of any kind, even the Wright brothers knew this. They said, and their famous quote is, "It is possible to fly without motors, but not without knowledge and skill." The Wright brothers perfected the art of aircraft control by flying gliders first. Once they had that dialed in, all they needed to do was add a motor to their machine, and voila, they had the first powered flights. An aspiring pilot in today's world would do himself a wonderful service by learning how to fly a glider. That is where you fly, learning the value of rudder skills. You must know rudder skills in order to fly an airplane. You will learn those rudder skills flying a glider. It is possible, it's baked into the regulations. You can start out in gliders. You can continue on to get a private pilot or a sport pilot glider rating. They're changing the sport pilot rules, hopefully later on this summer. You can start out in gliders and move on to powered aircraft, just as the Wrights did, and working within a well-established FAA regulatory framework.
Bob, I have some grandsons. They just lost a little bit of age on me. Things happen. Things change. But at 14, they came to me and said, "Hey, Papa, can we take glider lessons?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. We have to ask Bob Jex."
The answer is a 14-year-old can start out in gliders and they can solo on their 16th birthday. It is wonderful experience for a 14-year-old, even someone who isn't sure if they want to go into aviation. One of the best things, if you're a mentor of young people, take your inquisitive youth and take them out to the glider port. Seminole Lake is one, Pearson is one, Zephyr Hills is another one. There's glider ports all over Central Florida. Look on Google to see where the glider ports near you might be. Take them out for an introductory lesson and let them be introduced to the marvels of flying without an engine. It is possible to do it, very safe to do it. There's limitations that you have to honor. And get them involved at an early age, and it's so fun to be out there.
Well, Bob, I've been getting some nasty notes here on my communication device, my hailing device. They're complaining that I thought Plane Time was an aviation maintenance safety show. What are you talking about gliders so much? Okay, I'll bite. We'll go there. There's plenty of aeronautical maintenance information that you either need to know, need to learn, to even operate a glider. They don't just put themselves together as they come into the trailer, but we encourage you to look up, and I'm going to ask you a question. What is the definition of airworthy? Don't answer it. Don't blurt it out. Everybody, not all at once. Not all at once. Just what is the definition of airworthy? At the end of this segment, we're going to go back and revisit that. And then I want to hear everyone, including you sitting on your couch eating potato chips, what the definition of airworthy is. It's easy. But anyway, okay, jumping back in it. Bob, if we were to have an opportunity to get to a glider port, where would we find a glider port? Did you realize, you know this because you drove here, but the place that this seniors tournament took place is within like 35 minutes of Orlando. Claremont is not that far away. Groveland, Claremont. And if you're in a municipality, there's typically a glider port somewhere within an hour or two, maybe, of where you live. Where would resourcefulness?
Sure.
Where would you go if you were looking for a glider
There's
port?
typically, the glider ports are typically located well away from the busiest airspace in a region. So for Orlando, you'll find the Seminole Lake Glider Port on the west edge of what is known as the Mode C Vale, out there in Groveland, Claremont, and you'll find glider ports away from the busiest airspace. Why? There's a couple of reasons. Number one, gliders are harder to see. They're slower than powered aircraft in many cases. They have the right of way over powered airplanes, and many of them do not carry electrical systems aloft with them. Many gliders are certified because they don't have a motor. They're not required to have an electrical system, although many modern gliders do carry batteries on board and have transponding systems, but many are not required to have that. So for that reason, you have to move the gliders away from the busiest airspace. Mm-hmm. And so you'll find glider operations taking place well away from the busy airports like Orlando Sanford, Orlando International, Tampa, but they're not too far from there because tourists like to come in and take these introductory flights and train for their glider rating while they're here. If you have access to a VFR sectional chart, look for the glider symbol over an airport that conducts glider operations. That's the charting symbol that looks like one of these gliders in this picture, and it'll help you identify where gliding takes place.
Mm. It's a very, very magical type of an experience to get involved with sailplanes, gliders, unpowered aircraft. But the planform, when you say they're a little bit harder to see, it's kind of a bad thing if it doesn't move in your windshield. If it doesn't move in your windshield, you're going to hit it. But the planform, as they're approaching you, is very, very small. Probably just, I don't know, probably three cubic feet.
Yeah, these aircraft are optimized for slow speed aerodynamics, and they're optimized for low speed flight. They have what they call high aspect ratio wings that provide tremendous coefficients of lift at the relatively slow speeds that they fly. They are extraordinarily photogenic. Look at these beautiful aircraft in these pictures. They are wonderful to look at from the ground or even from another glider. I'm sure that the hawks and eagles and buzzards that circle with these gliders also enjoy looking at them. They do spend a lot of time looking at one another, the glider pilots and the birds. But they are hard to see even when you're looking for them sometimes. When there's a lot of haze in the atmosphere, it makes a glider very difficult to see. And so there are systems that many gliders carry with them. One of them is called FLARMS, F-L-A-R-M-S, that is a glider-to-glider communication device that allows gliders to be alerted to the presence of one another.
It's I reflect back to my glider experience, which is short, but and a long time ago, but it never changes because it's so. All you hear is the wind going by the canopy, but your sense of your sensations,
kinesthetics,
your visual, you're actually more tuned into what's going on outside the glider, because there's not much to look at inside the glider because you're feeling for lift on the. And the attitude of a 30-to-1 glide ratio. A lot of people, that doesn't mean much to them, but for every 1 foot or every 1 inch that you drop, you go 30 inches forward. Or 1 foot, that's 30 feet forward. So tell me, I don't think people realize how far these gliders race on this turf. I mean, they go up into Georgia. And do you know some of the courses? Bob?
Our friend Sean Knickerbocker routinely and without much effort is able to take his glider. It's a high performance glider with an engine if he needs it, but he doesn't normally need it. He's able to go out to Tallahassee from Claremont on a single aero tow and back very easily. He's able to read the clouds. He's able to catch the thermals and ride them all the way out and back. World record flights have been set from State College, Pennsylvania, in central Pennsylvania, down into the southern Appalachian Mountains, riding ridge waves, for lift. Rather than thermals, they ride along the rising air coming up from the Appalachian Mountains. Well-known phenomenon. And you're able to go thousands of miles. In fact, you're limited more or less by the the amount of sunlight that you're going to have on those flights. And so those world record flights are started right at the legal beginning of daylight, and they're terminated near the end of what is legal for daylight operations. And they can stay airborne for that long.
Bob, here's a technical question for you. You're a pilot and all that, aren't you?
On paper, yes, sir.
Okay. Why would you have an oxygen cylinder in a glider?
That's a good question. And in fact, you can even get an instrument rating. As a glider pilot, you need to be instrument rated for the types of flights that some gliders can do. There is mountain soaring, mountain wave soaring that takes place out at Nevada. They reserve a block of airspace. These guys fly up high enough where the atmosphere thins out tremendously. And these guys are flying in the IFR flight levels, and they block off commercial flights from going through there during the windows that these gliders operate. But that's up in IFR airspace. You can't just be VFR anymore. You have to have an instrument rating.
Well, we're talking altitudes. I mean, there's some
Huge,
records that
yeah.
are set.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Altitude records.
Yeah, tens of thousands of feet. I don't know what the world record is for high altitude glider flights, but these guys are flying high enough to need thermal clothing, even pressure suits in some extreme cases.
Once it's turned into cabin heat?
Using what? Yeah, solar radiation, maybe. Remember what happened in Greek mythology to Icarus, and he flew a little too high in his human-powered aircraft, and he didn't have enough cabin heat, but the sun provided it and melted his wings. But in a modern-day context, there are gliders that are capable of going to 30, 40, maybe even 50,000 feet.
Did you know what the record is? 76,150 feet.
You must have a pressure suit in order to fly that high.
And that happened just
yeah.
recently, 2018.
It's amazing. The air is so thin up there. Remember, there's a powered aircraft called the U-2. It's actually looks more like a glider than it does like an airplane because of its very high aspect ratio wings. It's operating in the very thin stratosphere of our Earth's atmosphere.
Bob, I think I got something wrong. That altitude record is 76,124 feet.
But who's counting?
This stuff just comes to me. When you're in aviation, you're wired into all this information. We're going to talk about airworthiness, not on this segment. Let's hold that for the next segment, because I want everyone. Airworthiness is such a simple thing, but it can be we make it much more difficult than it really needs to be. But we need, Bob, we need more people into this industry. This is a wonderful place to start. And for the folks in Orlando and the area, please go out, just drive out to the glider port.
From an operational standpoint, there is room for you in the glider industry. To become a glider pilot initially, the rules are spelled out in Part 61. To be an add-on glider pilot, I myself am working on my commercial glider add-on. Those rules are also spelled out in Part 61. You don't need to do as much as an initial commercial glider pilot, but commercial is the highest that you can go. From an operational standpoint, you do not need to have a medical certificate. You do need to have solo endorsements and fly quite a bit of dual instruction with your instructor and log quite a bit of ground training topics. Many of those are available online through the FAAsafety.gov or online courses through SPORTIES or AOPA. There's plenty of resources out there to take advantage of. But you must absolutely get in the aircraft, fly to testing standards with your instructor and be able to log a number of solos. It's interesting that the cross-country distance for airplanes is 50.1 miles or greater. That's also the requirement for gliders. If you're going to fly cross-country in a glider, you have to go 50.1 miles in order for it to count towards a certificate or rating. So it's interesting. There are it's not as long of a pathway to get your glider rating, but the body of knowledge is quite different. So I offer this to the professional pilots out there. Put glider flying on your bucket list. Learn the cross-training skills that are needed in order to fly glider. I'll bet you'll find that the glider community and the sailing community have a lot more in common than a glider pilot and a jet pilot. They are quite different.
Bob, you've been to air shows before, hadn't you?
Just a couple.
Okay. Do you remember seeing the performers before they go out and do their routine or their performance, and they're walking on the ramp, their head is down, and they're doing like this, and they're doing all the,
That's their golden hour just before they perform.
That's what they're doing because they're so tuned into and focused on what their mission is and how perfect that they're trying to get this altitude, headings. I noticed that a lot at the glider port because the folks that are getting ready to launch into these beautiful swan-like creatures to take them many, many miles away at very, very high altitudes, they're focused. And they're not just putting the glider together. They're not just there to polish them and make them pretty. They're there tuning in to become one with the glider. And really that's the extension of their hands, their feet, their fingers. But it's such an outrageously experience that it's just hard to explain. It really is. I wish that I had more dedicated more time. We all have the same amount of time. Is what we choose to do with it. But I wish that I had dedicated more time to get involved with soaring.
One of the biggest aspects of competitive soaring is dialing into the weather forecast, the current and forecast weather. And in the first segment of Plane Time today, you saw Dr. Bartuska talking about soaring weather. It's a huge body of knowledge, the ability to read and interpret weather information as it pertains to a soaring flight is a learned skill. I still have a long way to go in my own training for that. But the glider pilots that are competing against one another, they know that weather inside and out. They know when the best thermals are going to be. They don't know specifically where they're going to be, but they know when overdevelopment is going to occur, and it's at that point it's too late in the day to get a good soaring flight out. But these guys know it. They can teach it in many cases. These guys are instructors as well, and they've been doing it a long time.
And when you say guys, you do mean guys and gals.
Of course.
There's a lot of
course.
very, very accommodating. Tell you, Bob, we're going to wrap up the first segment, and we're going to talk airworthiness and the definition of airworthiness in the last segment, next segment coming up. So guys, hang in there. And come back and see us. We've got more to talk about, and we're also going to talk about mosaic. We're going to just introduce that, just tease you a little bit with mosaic. And that's not as in artwork. See you next interview.